But don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Yo, let's talk about this here censorship. We have the story from The Guardian. Russia blocks access to Facebook and Twitter. Oh, man.
Good.
The move to block Facebook and Twitter comes as the government passed a bill that criminalizes fake reports against the war. You know what's funny? I'm not a fan of censorship for the most part. You know, I think it's obviously there's nuance here. Censoring some stuff is important and good. Like we talk about child abuse, criminal acts and stuff. That's where the censors are really supposed to be like, okay, that is crime, like against children and humanity. Get rid of it. But when I see Russia banning Facebook and Twitter, I feel like this kind of catharsis of like, I wish, just get rid of it.
I know.
I hate it so much, but it is, truth be told, Twitter and Facebook are still pretty good despite all of the bad. And therein lies the real challenge, the ability for regular people to actually have a voice, even if they do face censorship. And that's why we resist the censorship here, because the power granted to the people by these platforms was good. And now they're trying to take it back because they realize they made a mistake.
Well, I'm generally against censorship. I generally agree with what you just said. The only really kind of interesting thing, I don't know that it's even directly connected to this. The only really interesting thing that I tweeted this morning, I think people got really mad about it, is that one of the utilities of Facebook, and in particular, more than Twitter, but Twitter has this too, is if you have some controversial narrative thing going on, some controversial activity, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's a virus, whatever it is, one epistemological tool, to sound very philosophical, that's emerged in the past few years is whatever Facebook will ban is probably true.
Yes.
So if you want to find out what's going on with Ukraine or with a virus or with the World Economic Forum or whatever it is, or the critical race theory, you probably need to just post some edgy stuff on Facebook and see what they ban.
You've got to add a little bit of that age to your impersonation.
Like he talks like this.
Well, I don't have any marbles in my mouth. I just drank an energy drink for.
Do we have marbles? You got to stuff your cheek with like toilet paper or marbles.
Yeah, I'm a very excited German.
World Economic Forum.
I hear what you're saying about the utility of Facebook in that sense. It's also true of the fact checkers that they're in bed with. I found them incredibly useful in the past. So I remember there was one instance about 2 years ago where I was doing research on a video about the scandal with Biden's son in Ukraine and the investigator being fired by Joe Biden effectively because he said he would withhold aid to their country. And one of the fact checkers that I found, and I was looking up, I wanted to look up debunkings of this to see how strong the argument against the potential for foul play was. And the response was, well, it's true that Joe Biden told them to withhold the funding for Ukraine unless they fired this prosecutor, but that was the official policy of the Obama administration in general. It's like, oh, right, because Biden had nothing to do. The vice president of the administration had nothing to do with the policy of the Obama administration.
No, but think about that for 2 seconds. Yes, Joe Biden did try to push an illegal quid pro quo, but Obama told him to do it.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Well,
it's like, okay, well,
exactly.
Like, should Pence have done this and then it would have been okay, like, because Trump wanted it to happen?
It's just hilarious because in these fact checks, they will always try to use their best argument against something which in a number of cases is actually true, and they reveal their hand in doing so. And so there is a lot of utility there.
Mostly false, context missing.
Yeah.
The context is we don't want you to believe it.
Mostly false is like my favorite.
Partly true.
Because there was one instance where on PolitiFact, there were 2 quotes. One was from Trump and one was from Bernie, and they were almost verbatim identical. And Trump's was mostly false and Bernie's was mostly true. And it was something like Trump saying, you know, like inner city black youth have a 51% unemployment rate. And Bernie said like the same thing, but Bernie's was mostly true. And they're like, well, Bernie does get this wrong. It is. While Trump gets most of this wrong, some of it is true.
Along the lines of like who is saying it defines if it's true or not. That's very disturbing to me.
It's true. There are other examples.
And how do you quantify truth? Like, you know, when they say mostly peaceful protest, how do you quantify when it's most?
I got
93%.
Yeah, what
93% peaceful,
Yeah.
7% fire.
Isn't that hilarious? That's 7. They like
That was the actual
touted
number.
that. And that's the thing. Well, they used that number as if it was some kind of own. They're like, only 7% of them are violent. Are you insane? This is a country of 330 million people, and these protests are popping up everywhere. Even if it is only 7%, that's insane.
No. It's like the weather. Okay, so this is the misconception people have is when they say it's a 40% chance of rain, they're not saying flip a coin, it might rain. They're saying 40% of the day might be rain. I don't know if that's true. But that's what I've heard. Like people, they've done these internet arguments. That's how you get to view the 93 to 7% thing with BLM. They're not saying of the 100 protests, 93 were peaceful. They're saying of the 100 protests, in all of them,
Exactly.
7% of the time was extreme violence.
Which again conflicts with that I've cited on the show before, which is that 70% of major city police departments reported officers being injured during these protests. And you're telling me only 7% of them were violent?
I think in combat or in war, most of the time is not combat. Then you have a burst of it. Probably less than 7% of the time a soldier, even a combat soldier, is in combat. 7% is a lot of time for destruction to be going on.
Yeah, I mean, that means there's like a good half hour out of the protest.
Notably a violent protest.
Yeah, smashing windows
7% of
and
it's
stuff like
violent.
that, or burning down buildings.
Well,
it's
not
also-
just buildings. You have to burn down buildings specifically in a poor black neighborhood
Yep.
for Black
Right.
Lives Matter. Just like
Because
get the stats
insurance,
right.
because insurance will take care of it.
Poor supplies.
Because insurance means anyone can destroy anything for any reason, and it'll be fine.
We're talking about like if you if you have faith in the person, then you believe what they're saying, and if Trump says it, you're like, nah, he's lying. I came across this internet video last night of Eileen Waranos. You guys know who this woman is? She was like a hitchhiker, and she carried a gun and killed 7 guys. She was like, I had a gun, and if the guys attacked me, I would defend myself. And the cops knew it, and they let me keep killing. Eventually, after 7 deaths in a year, they arrested her and put her to death row. So she gave this speech. She was taking all this meth. Her skin's all ripped apart, and she's like, I had to do it. And you're like, oh, this evil woman, But then they deep fake Christina Pazitsky's face on it. Christina P, the beautiful comedian, and it's this beautiful woman. It's still Eileen's story, but it's with a beautiful face. And you're like, I understand why you had a gun and why you were defending yourself. Because when you see a beautiful person saying it, it has a different meaning than an ugly person. It is
That's
terrifying
100% true.
to think that is real. It's on Instagram. This guy, Brian Monarch, his page.
What does it to do with what we're talking about?
It's a deep fake of like you're saying Biden says something and everyone's like, yeah, and then Trump does it and they're like,
I
it's
see.
evil.
Yeah, right.
Like, all of a sudden, but it's the same exact, and in
What's
this
the guy's
case, it's
name?
the exact Brian Monarch. It's the exact same voice. It's her with a deep fake image, and it has a different meaning.
It's very well, and this is one of the huge problems, one of the many huge problems with Hollywood. But they're always casting extremely attractive people, even to do completely reprehensible things.
Scroll down.
And so
it's from
I think it
25
makes
weeks
those
ago.
things seem more normal or likable to a lot of people.
25 weeks ago is a while.
Yeah, it's been up for a long time.
This is repressive tolerance, y'all. Of course, I have to do the stupid philosophy thing, right? So, 1965,
There it
leader
is.
of the New Left, Herbert
Upper right,
Marcuse,
upper right. There it
writes
is, yeah.
repressive tolerance. You'll see. Well, this maybe you won't see, but when we do Trump and Biden, you will.
So, and you got to see. This is the deep fake.
Yeah. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
talk about this. I'm kind of confused as to what we're talking about.
Once you see the video, you'll know it's 3 minutes. It's her like basically on death row, and they're giving her a final interview, and she's like, "I've come to peace with it. You're all a bunch of this and that." And it's just so bone chilling to see that same sentiment with a beautiful face. Because I was getting like empathy. I was like, wow, maybe she shouldn't have been put to death.
Right. So this is what's going on. There's been a very I hate to maybe pin this on the guy because I thought he was funny too, but I call this the Jon Stewart effect. There's been a relentless campaign for a very long time to make conservatives bad, ugly, and stupid to the general population. So Trump is bad, ugly, and stupid by this metric. Bernie is a leftist. He's old. He's doing the best he can. He's got the right message. But this is repressive tolerance. Herbert Marcuse, a leading leftist or Marxist thinker of the 1960s, writes an essay in 1965 called Repressive Tolerance. The argument, and I kid you not, I don't exaggerate at all. The thesis statement of the argument is literally movements from the left must be tolerated even when they're violent. Movements from the right must not be extended tolerance at all. And so this is why you see that disparity. We live in Marcuse's world. We live in the neo-Marxist architecture that this guy created. And he's very influential. He wrote a book in '64 called One Dimensional Man, sold 300,000 copies in the first year, if I'm not mistaken. That stat might be over its lifetime, but I think it was over the first year. Very influential, widely credited as the most influential leftist thinker. So he laid out an architecture where the leftist line of thought is when we do it, it's good, it must be tolerated, and anybody who doesn't tolerate us is a fascist. If the right does it, it's bad. Period. It must not be tolerated. I wasn't exaggerating. If we pulled up the essay, you could actually find the quote that is the thesis statement of the essay. Movements from the left must be extended tolerance. Movements from the right must not be extended tolerance. To the point, he says, do you prevent right-wing people from even being able to form the thought? In other words, he says, this is censorship and even pre-censorship, which I'm not even sure what pre-censorship is, so that the thought can't even enter their head. And this is the double standard that we run into, where you see the mostly true, mostly false for Bernie versus Trump. This is the double standard that the left has erected. And everybody tries to point out, oh, they're hypocrites. Oh, they're hypocrites. And finally, it's so exciting for me to see it. Finally, people are catching on. It's not hypocrisy. It's hierarchy. They're actually asserting we are better people than you. We are smarter people than you. We are more moral people than you. And we are saner people than you. And therefore, you have to put up with all of our crap. And we're going to put up with literally none of your crap. And that's why you see that dichotomy of mostly true, mostly false, when it's literally the same statement from Trump and Bernie.
This is why I get frustrated when I see like Joe Rogan apologizing to these people.
Cannot apologize.
Because when he did, it only made things worse.
Yeah.
It made the story bigger, and it made the story more pronounced. It made the story last longer. And you know what I love is I actually really enjoy when they get triggered and they flip out. I'm trending again. So this is the craziest thing. I was trending for like, I think I have been swatted more times than anyone else in like this short of a period. I have been trending more, and I'm like, what am I even doing? It's really simple, actually. I'm not calling anybody any slurs. I'm not insulting people, but they're getting extremely angry at me because I don't care about them.
Yeah.
And so when I tweeted, I despise appeals to emotion in response to a translator who was crying, talking about Zelensky. Then all of a sudden they come out and they try making it out to be that I'm insulting Zelensky. And I wasn't. My response was, because Twitter put an editorial up on the What's Happening saying podcaster Tim Pool, blah, 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 blah. I said I drafted my formal apology to this tweet, wiped my ass with it and threw it in the trash. And they got really mad about that because it's hierarchy, right?
That's right.
They're supposed to be able to tell me that what I did was wrong, and I just laughed in their faces.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's the crying Wojak NPC meme. Like,
That's right. That's right.
They get so mad they start swatting.
Rogan
us.
should have either ignored it or made a joke and then moved on.
Well,
the end.
I mean,
not to give the guy advice, but
my attitude is insult them, and if they counter, insult them again, and if they counter, keep insulting them and laugh while you do it.
that's our Twitter.
Well, into your point, I mean, this is almost perfectly summarized by AOC's quote that she will be chastised. She'll be chastised for being factually inaccurate when she's morally correct. So even when they say something which is blatantly untrue, it's okay because their agenda is good and pure. And to bring her into it again and bring it back to fact checkers, there was a hysterical example where she said that she was in the main Capitol building during the quote unquote insurrection, and she was not. And
she didn't say she was in the Capitol building.
No, she didn't.
No. This story is so much worse than I'm surprised the right never caught this. Mm-hmm. Like I actually briefly mentioned it to Ben Shapiro, and he was surprised. He was like, "Wow, nobody caught that." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez claimed that while the insurrection was occurring, there was a bang on her door.
That's right.
And she ran and hid in the bathroom, and then she heard a voice. Where is she?
Yes.
Where? That's what she did on her video, and then she was like, "This is it." She thought she was going to die. So I actually saw that, and I started looking at the timestamps and seeing what was going on. And then I said, at this time she was talking about this time, there's people standing around in the hallways of the congressional building. No one's worried. What is she talking about? I had a Huffington Post reporter tell me my timeline was wrong and that I was actually showing video from the bomb threat. And I responded to them, that's the time frame that AOC claimed the guy was knocking on her door, which would mean the guy knocked on her door well before anyone breached the Capitol building. And this guy from the Huffington Post was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Hey, how about that? AOC made the whole story up. What it really was a cop knocked on her door because of the bomb scare. She was not afraid for her life. Nothing had even happened. No one had breached any buildings. Nothing had happened. She made the whole thing up.
Yeah, well, there was when she said she was at, so she had this whole story. And I can't remember who it was pointed out that it wasn't true. She wasn't at the Capitol building at the time. And then the fact checker said...
She never said she was at the Capitol building.
Okay.
She never said she was at the Capitol building.
Interesting.
She said she was in her congressional office in a different building. And this was significant because the fact checker started saying all the conservatives were wrong because she wasn't in the Capitol building. And then for me, I was like, I never said she was. I watched her Instagram 45-minute video or whatever and said she fabricated the story, and I laid out the timelines. I'm surprised the conservatives didn't catch that she fabricated that story. They were criticizing her, saying, she wasn't in the Capitol, but still, it's an absurd story. And it was just like, dude.
It's kind of like reading an article till you see the word you're looking for and then you stop reading. As soon as you like get confirmation of what you think you wanted to see, then you're like, I don't need to research any further.
They were saying that like she was claiming she was scared, but she wasn't even in the Capitol building. The fact checkers came out and said, yes, but there are tunnels connecting the Capitol to the congressional offices. So it's reasonable that she would be scared the insurrectionists made it there. And then my response was, no, it isn't. Her story happened a full hour before anyone got near the Capitol building, unless AOC knew they were going to do it. Hey, maybe the feds should question her as to how she knew they were going to be storming in the building.
Maybe.
That's right. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast. And there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and we'll see you all there.